Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for October 6, 2017. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Netflix prices, Westworld Season 2, a V for Vendetta TV series, Tyrese and the delay for Fast 9, and Bride of Frankenstein has been postponed. Is the Dark Universe dead? And in the mailbag, we will address some questions that arose from our discussion about spoilers on yesterday's podcast. Joining me today is Slash Film weekend editor Bradford Oman.
Hello.
He's back. And Slash Film writer Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
Brad, how's it been? Like you've been gone for quite a bit. You're in the teaching realm these days.
Yes. I've been student teaching to complete a graduate program to get my teaching license to teach English at the high school level, and I'm just exhausted. It has been a nonstop whirlwind. I'm still keeping up with some Slash Film stuff, but then I'm teaching my classes, and I have to do a bunch of extra stuff for my student teaching program to go along with it, and it is a lot. My free time has been drastically cut to almost being non-existent. I haven't been to a movie theater in, I want to say, 2.5, 3 weeks.
You're wasting money on that movie pass, Brad.
I mean, not really, because I'll see like 2 movies in a month, and it'll pay for itself. And so I'm finally seeing Blade Runner 2049 tonight, the night of this recording. So that will be a nice escape for me.
You're seeing that before me. By the way, my girlfriend Kitra ordered a movie pass the week that they announced the $9.99 price, and still has not gotten it in the mail.
I have not received mine either. It's been, I think, more than a month now.
My friend Andy ordered his the same time, and he just got his a couple days ago.
Yeah, so they must be on they must have gotten so many orders that they couldn't fulfill. Like they probably had to buy like a MasterCard facility to, create those credit cards to fulfill the orders. Anyways, let's get into the news. Speaking about movie prices, Netflix is raising the prices yet again. HT, what do we know?
So Netflix is raising the prices of its standard plan and its premium plan. The standard plan will go up from $9.99 per month to $10.99 per month, while the premium service, which caters to Ultra HD and 4-device simultaneous viewing, will rise from $11.99 per month to $13.99 per month. Oh, and I forgot to say the standard plan is the plan that allows subscribers to stream on 2 devices simultaneously. But the good news that comes out of this is that the basic plan, the lowest tier, remains the same at $7.99, which it has stayed at since the plan began in 2010. So this is the second time that Netflix has raised its prices in 2 years. The last time it raised its prices, it was in 2015. And they did a sort of confusing, slow rollout back then that was meant to appeal to its longtime subscribers. But this time around, they're just doing it immediately. It's happening in November, and users will begin to see a 30-day notice starting October 19th. So they'll get a little notification saying the prices will change in a month, starting in November. And this is sort of on the tails of increased competition that Netflix is seeing in the streaming service field. We're seeing more original content from Amazon Prime, Hulu. Disney recently announced that it was going to pull all of its original films and Marvel and Star Wars films from Netflix to its own exclusive streaming service beginning in 2019. So it makes sense that Netflix is starting to try to up its game. It's rolling out a few more features like downloading and trying to appeal more to current and new subscribers. And apparently, Chief Content Officer Ted Sarandos told Variety that Netflix plans to spend about $7 billion on original shows and movies next year, which is a lot. So this will definitely be adding to that.
Do you think anybody is outraged over this, increase of a couple dollars? Like, it seems to me that, we are underpaying for Netflix as it is. They in 2017, they're producing over 1,000 hours of new original content. for us. I'm paying $15 for HBO. And, that's more, and what do I watch on HBO? Game of Thrones? Like, an hour a week, which isn't even on right now. So,
that's all you're using HBO for. You're using HBO wrong, first of all.
I probably am, because I'm renting a lot of movies instead of actually watching older movies. You are correct.
They have new movies on HBO, too. You're missing out on some of the new films that they release on there.
Yeah, there's plenty of good stuff on HBO that like I've missed in theaters, and I'm like, oh, cool, I can catch this on HBO now. And there's also just some good stuff that is older that it's nice to see again that I don't have on DVD or easily available to watch.
But back to Netflix, do you think that this price is outrageous? Like it definitely seems like we are getting way more value than $11 out of the service.
I think at this point we're getting more value. I remember when the prices were first raised back in 2015, and I think when they did another price hike earlier, I was a little bit upset about that because back then they didn't have nearly the amount of content of films and shows that they have now. And as a longtime subscriber of Netflix, I had Netflix way before they started streaming. Back when they were doing the mail-in DVDs, I was a little upset that I wasn't getting any sort of incentive as a longtime subscriber. But now it's kind of like it's what you buy and you get what you pay for, essentially. So I think as of now, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'm not going to be up in arms about it, but people in general just don't like when something goes up in price. I know that when my movie theater that we used to have in town here raised their prices on tickets, it was always like, come on, really? Like, and if the experience isn't improved or nothing is made better, then that can be really frustrating. Now, Netflix, since they're going to keep increasing the amount of original programming they're making, sure, we'll get some benefit out of it, but it's not something that you necessarily feel or see immediately to justify the price increase. So I'm not going to complain. I'm fine with it. It's an extra $12 a year for the amount I get from Netflix isn't going to break my bank or make me cry, but it can be a little frustrating, I suppose.
Okay, so speaking of HBO, Westworld Season 2 is coming up. They're promoting it at New York Comic Con. I'm a little hesitant on how we should preface this news story because of spoilers, but I would just say...
if you haven't seen Westworld Season 1, you probably shouldn't listen to this part of the podcast.
Yeah, maybe skip ahead like 3 minutes if you haven't seen Westworld Season 1. I think it's fair to say this. Before we skip ahead, it's fair to say this. The movie Westworld, which the series is based on, included not just Westworld, but other worlds, right?
Yes.
Yes. So it has been speculated since it was said to be in development that Westworld might actually enter other worlds. Now, saying that, if you want to know what may or may not be in the works, you can fast forward about 3 minutes. Brad, what do we know?
The Vanity Fair Summit has been going on where various bits of entertainment news has been coming out, and Westworld creators and executive producers Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy were there to talk about the upcoming season of the show, and they were asked about the possibility of maybe seeing Roman World or Medieval World, which are two of the amusement parks from the original Westworld movie, pop up in the next season. They asked, since you guys included Shogun World in the season finale of the first season, why were Roman World and Medieval World left out? And Nolan simply responded by saying, well, we had to save something for season 2. So that seems to be confirmation that we'll start to explore the fact that there are other theme parks that exist besides Westworld and Shogun World, which isn't really a surprise. Like we said, they existed in the original movie. But since we haven't seen any of those worlds yet, that'll be something new if we get to check into the operations of those parks and whether or not they have been affected by what's been happening at Westworld.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering, has all hell broken loose in those worlds as well? Or do they have separate entry points? Like, you saw how, like, the train comes into the station for people to come to Westworld. Is that the entry point for all these worlds? And if so, or if not, like, are those worlds still operating? Are they other, like, is Disneyland closed, but Disney California Adventure still, going full steam?
Yeah, you would think that they would have to be separate because they're so big and expansive. Like, obviously, the train doesn't take you to those other worlds, but the hub that we see is probably goes to all these different sections. And so, but what it makes me wonder, actually, even more so now, because there's been a lot of conversation about this, is exactly where Westworld exists, because if there are all these other worlds that are just as big as Westworld, there has to be a massive area of land for all these parks to exist. And some people have posited that Westworld maybe takes place on a different planet or something like that, and so maybe we'll learn more about that as we learn more about these other parks.
Yes. Moving on. Let's move on from Westworld to another TV series in development, and that is V for Vendetta. Something I never expected to become a TV show. HT, what do we know?
So V for Vendetta is reportedly in development from British TV network Channel 4. They're the network responsible for high-concept genre hits like Black Mirror, before it came over to Netflix, Misfits, Ultraviolet, and Humans. And this is the only thing we know about it so far. There isn't any news about who the writers or showrunners or producers for this is. But this is an interesting sort of take on V for Vendetta, which is definitely a story that you wouldn't expect to be adapted to film either, because of how ambitious and how high concept it is. But I actually enjoyed the film that came out. That was directed by James McTeague and written by the Wachowskis, and starring Hugo Weaving and Natalie Portman. So that film I enjoyed, although author of the graphic novel Alan Moore did not. So we'll see if he is any more receptive to this TV show news.
What worries me about this this British network, Channel 4, is a lot of the stuff they do is kind of low budget. And I feel like this probably needs a little bit of a budget.
I'm like HT. I like the original movie as well, but I can't say that I'm necessarily intrigued to see this turn into a TV series, especially like you said, Peter. This, British outlet, they do some lower budget stuff that isn't all that impressive. So I feel like it's just going to be one of those things where we'll hear about it and talk about it for a bit, but then it'll kind of fall to the wayside. So it still has relevancy, which is frustrating for a number of reasons. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm indifferent probably. So one thing we haven't talked about on this podcast is that the 9th installment of the Fast and Furious franchise was pushed back from its original April 2019 release date all the way back to an Easter weekend release in 2020. So that extra year delay apparently really got Tyrese Gibson worked up into a frenzy, because he made a whole post on Instagram pleading to Dwayne Johnson to not do what was assumed to be a spin-off involving his character Hobbs and Jason Statham's character Shaw that would be separate from the entire Fast and Furious franchise and not one of the sequels as part of the main saga. I love that we're talking about Fast and Furious like it's the Star Wars franchise now, by the way. So he didn't want this to happen, and now apparently it sounds like he knows something that we don't, because he has created another passionate post on Instagram, this one being much more forward, directed towards Dwayne Johnson, saying, "Congratulations to The Rock and your brother-in-law, aka $7 producing partner, his producing partner, for making the Fast and Furious franchise about you." And he goes on to complain because it sounds like there's going to be a Hobbs-centric movie that may not feature Shaw, because he creates this hashtag No Shaw. And now he's upset because Fast and Furious 9 is pushed back, presumably because that means Tyrese doesn't get a paycheck that he gets to spend on who knows what. And I can't help but think that Tyrese is just being so whiny and desperate. Because, what do you care if it's pushed back? Go do something else. If you're that good of an actor...
Brad, he has nothing else to do. He's sitting at home waiting for them to call him.
No, he's not that good of an actor.
No, and he's not. And we know that because he was desperately trying to get the role of Green Lantern, which, probably isn't something that's going to happen for him either.
He also posted on Instagram a while back begging Michael Bay to put him in the last Transformers, which was hilarious. Yeah, he didn't understand why he wasn't back. And it's like, well, Tyrese, let's look at your, trends lately. Maybe it's because you're whiny and you're just desperate to be in all these movies. Maybe you can go back to rapping, I guess. And maybe it's also that he's an unknown quantity. He's unfiltered, and he almost. I mean, if you watch this is an example of my HBO viewing. If you watch the HBO doc on Dr. Dre and the whole Beats saga, that I forget the name of the
Defiant ones.
The Defiant ones. That opens with Tyrese almost single-handedly with I think a Facebook video or Instagram video, almost ruining the Apple Beats acquisition. Like he went live on video and announced it before the deal was done. This is a guy that can't, you can't trust with anything.
Yeah, he's a loose cannon, and if there's one thing that, studios don't like, it's actors who don't know how to, censor what they say and keep secrets, that kind of thing. This is a big part of the reason that Asa Butterfield didn't end up with the job as Spider-Man, because as soon as there was an inkling that he was the frontrunner to get it, apparently he was acting like he had already gotten the job. Even people on the set of the movie he was working at the time started calling him Spider-Man. And then Marvel was like, yeah, we don't like this. Nope, we're going with, somebody else.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see what comes of this cryptic speak that Tyrese is talking about.
I hope that even if they do this spinoff and Fast 9 is delayed, I hope the first thing they do in Fast 9 is have a scene where Tyrese has just a very complicated death.
That would be fun. That would be
Or maybe even just to add insult to injury, just make it be like a really terrible death. Like all of a sudden he just gets hit by a car that's driven by just a random person.
A vending machine falls on him.
Right.
The thing is, even if they did that, Brad, the Fast and Furious saga, as you call it, they can bring people back from the dead. They've done it before. So, that doesn't mean the end of Tyrese. He would still be on Instagram begging them to give him another shot. So, I don't know. But talking about sagas, the Dark Universe, is it dead? Bride of Frankenstein has been postponed. HT, what do we know?
Bride of Frankenstein director Bill Condon was working on pre-production for the film, and it was going to start filming in February 2018. But pre-production was suddenly halted today, and they decided to postpone it to retool the script, work on the project a little more, and it's basically been put on hold with stars Javier Bardem and reported star Angelina Jolie just kind of lying in the waits until it begins again. So the statement that Universal Pictures sent was, after thoughtful consideration, Universal Pictures and director Bill Condon have decided to postpone Bride of Frankenstein. None of us want to move too quickly to meet a release date when we know this special movie needs more time to come together. Bill is a director whose enormous talent has proven time and again, and we all look forward to continuing to work on this film together. So Bill Condon has said that he wants to make this just a good solo monster film and not just another cog in the cinematic universe machine. But so this may be just him trying to retool the film while the executives in the studio tries to launch the universe after The Mummy failed at the box office and with critics. So this might just be another sort of attempted start point for the Dark Universe.
And it should be said that the Mummy failed domestically in the U.S., but internationally it did fairly well. I wouldn't say it was a success, but enough that Universal might still be doing this Dark Universe. It's unclear, especially with this news.
It would be extremely embarrassing if they didn't, especially after they made a whole special Dark Universe logo to spin around behind the Universal logo to introduce the Mummy.
Like, what were they thinking? Like, I feel like they should have waited and, done this as Iron Man. You don't announce, like, oh, we're going for the Avengers. Do you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They definitely got a little too big for their britches in terms of the cinematic universe. Like, no one was really lining up to see all these classic movie monsters interact in a big blockbuster spectacle, but apparently enough people thought they would.
And if you wanted to see that, why not just remake Monster Squad? Like, why not just go right into that? I like Bill Condon, and he has a love for the Universal Monster movies that is very clear in all his work. He puts, Easter eggs and references, and I'm not sure I'm excited for Bride of Frankenstein, but I don't know. We'll see if it happens. It sounds like Universal is saying it's still going to happen, but they're just going to work a little bit longer on it. let's get into the mailbag because we have quite a bit of a mailbag today. Yesterday on the podcast, we featured in our feature presentation HT's article on the rise of spoiler culture. And we kind of had this discussion with HT and myself are both kind of on the same page. We agree that spoilers are not to be feared as much as everybody is fearing them. I think maybe a couple people might have took that the wrong way to mean that we like spoilers. And I don't know about HT, but I mean, I don't like spoilers. I don't want to spoil myself. And I don't want to spoil others. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not that. It's just that if I do get spoiled on a movie, and that's a good movie, the movie's still going to be good, regardless of the spoiler. But anyways, before we get into the discussion here, let's read this letter from the mailbag. It's from Sherwin V. From the Bay Area. He writes in, regarding the podcast on rise of spoiler culture, I was a bit surprised on your stance on the matter. However, given that you cover film news, spoilers come with the territory of the job, so I do understand that you might have developed into that position. I feel that there are two topics discussed and should be treated separately from each other. Number one, the film is no good if you know the key elements going in. I agree with both you and HT, that the quality of the film doesn't change. A well-crafted film is what it is. Spoilers do not change that. However, keeping a lid on spoilers is about preserving the experience, which leads to his second point. Knowing a death or twist is coming doesn't matter. Now, first of all, we didn't say that. Okay, he says, disagree with this completely. Knowing major elements going into a film changes how you view the movie. The context changes. Watching The Sixth Sense a second time after you know the twist is a totally different experience. Rather than watching things unfold, you instead are watching for clues, interactions as to how the twist works or is justified. Now, he goes on more. I'll get into that in a bit, but I think we should just respond to that. I'd say, first off, before I hand it over to you guys, that we never said that knowing a death or twist is coming doesn't matter. We said that if you're going to enjoy the film, you're not going to enjoy it less because you know that's coming. Going into Force Awakens, I knew who was going to die in the third act of that film. And that still affected me in an emotional way. I didn't look for clues to see it coming. I know he uses Sixth Sense as an example, and I feel like there's not many films that you can use as that example. There's that and maybe Memento are the only two that like you can kind of totally recontextualize a film based on a twist.
Usual Suspects.
What was that? Oh, yes, that too.
Usual Suspects, yeah.
What do you guys think of what he said? Let's go to Brad first because HT, we heard from you yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly on the same page with you guys too. I don't think spoilers can ruin a movie whatsoever. It can make the experience feel a little less special sometimes because if you find out something before a movie that would have been a moving or shocking surprise when you see the movie for the first time, that kind of takes away a little bit of the magic. But like you guys said, if a movie is great, knowing details about it, no matter how revealing they are, isn't going to spoil that movie. And you're right, The Sixth Sense is a very unique example. And I wholeheartedly agree with the deaths aspect too. Like you, I knew for a fact that Han Solo was going to die in that movie. But if anything, that actually made the lead up to that sequence feel that much more powerful because I knew what was coming, and it created a different kind of tension and sadness because every time I saw Han Solo, I was like, oh my God, this is the last time, this is going to happen. Oh man, this is where he's going to die. And the moment when he does die was just like, it's crushing for sure. So that didn't ruin the aspect for me, but I do understand where people are coming from when it comes to spoilers taking away from the experience. But where I have a problem is when people start complaining about certain details being spoilers when they're not. And this is the problem that we run into a lot at Slash Film, where something that is in a headline or a tweet that we send out, they're like, gosh, why don't you guys stop it with the spoilers, all right? And these are details that are being revealed by the director about the movie a year and a half in advance before the movie comes out. If they thought that was something that was going to ruin the experience of the movie, there's no way in hell they would be telling you about it. So I think that this idea of fearing spoilers has escalated to a point where any information on the internet that a person individually doesn't want to know about is automatically deemed a spoiler, when it's not our job to adhere to everyone's own weird rules of what they don't want to know about a movie. If you don't want to, or a TV show even, if you don't want to know anything about those movies or TV shows, stop reading any article about those movies or TV shows, because you're bound to find out things that you didn't want to know until you watched it.
Yes. Okay, well, I want to pose this question to HT. There seems to be kind of like this rise in the spoiler culture and Jeff Kanata, who is a Slash Filmcast host, is one of the proponents of this, of the Unsullied experience. And he goes into a movie without seeing any advertising, without seeing any trailers, without knowing what the plot is. He wants the experience completely pure. Does that make HT? Does that make for a better cinema-going experience?
Well, I don't know if that makes for a better cinema-going experience. I don't begrudge people who want to avoid any and all spoilers or details about a movie. And there are moments, too, when I think, oh, I wish I hadn't known or read of this going in. But I think it's honestly people's personal preference. I think, some people want to know a little bit about the movie before going in so they know what to expect. I spoke about this in the piece, the kind of expectations that you go in with a movie. Like for Mother, for example, people had different expectations going in, and that was part of like this misleading marketing so that they could avoid all spoilers. But then they ended up having a horrible time. And I think, I admire the Unsullied experience. I have moments with a movie where I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the movie is about. I do enjoy it, but I don't think I'll try it for every movie, just because it sounds so exhausting to try to avoid all and everything. It's like you really have to shut your eyes, and especially like in the work we do.
I've been with Jeff Kanata at movie screenings, where the trailers begin to play and he puts his fingers in his ears, closes his eyes, and starts making noises so he can't hear what is going on in screen. And like, no offense to Jeff, I'm a good friend with him. I'm hanging out with him this weekend. I don't want to live my life in fear of marketing. And my answer to this question is that as I become older, I used to be a person who would, get excited to go to Sundance each year, see films that I didn't know what they were about, who's in them, go in unsullied as possible, because there hasn't even been trailers or photos or anything. Do you know what I mean? And I used to love that process of discovering things, and not to say anything bad about Sundance in general, but just in movies in general, I feel like when you do that, you set yourself up for more disappointment. Because I think it's wrong that in this form, in the entertainment world, that we're valuing ignorance over an informed opinion. I don't see the reason why I think many people think that critics hate more movies than they hate is because critics are paid to see everything, and that includes movies that they would never see if it was playing on the TV next to them in a cafe. And you at home, you're going to pay for the things that you are interested in. So you have an interest in, you have an investment already. You saw the trailer, has an actor or director you like in it. It has a plot that you like. So you have some kind of some kind of connection to it. And I think that's with me as I'm getting older. I'm seeing less. I don't want to say less movies, because I still see probably like 4 or 5 movies a week, but not 4 or 5 new movies. I see only the movies that I want to see. I'm not going to the movie to see any old movie because, I don't want to waste my time. There's too much content. We're on peak TV. I'm by watching the trailer, getting excited for something and knowing where I'm going to invest my time. I think that's smart. And I think it leads to, in the end, more, I have a better experience in the end, but that's just me. I'm not looking down upon the people that don't.
Actually, going off of that, Peter, I think that the point about knowing everything going into a movie strengthens sometimes your experience. Like, for example, when we want to rewatch a movie that we love, we know everything that has happened in it, and we can probably recite it word for word, but that doesn't ruin our experience of the movie any more than it did when we watched it the first time. We might even like it more if we watch it again and again. So I don't think that spoilers or knowing what happens in movies can ruin your experience. I don't begrudge people who want to go in completely blind, but I think that either way, if the story, like I said, is strong enough, then it will carry you along for the ride.
Brad, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite on the same page with you because I still relish the Sundance experience of going into a movie blind, especially without any buzz whatsoever. I like discovering a movie that nobody yet knows about. It does create this. I
should say that Sundance is probably a bad example for me to give because you're not going into any movie blind. You're going into a movie that a prestigious film festival and good programmers have, edited to, they have picked out the good ones. So that's probably a bad example on my part.
Well, not always the good ones, because I've seen plenty of bad Sundance too.
Yeah.
But also, I think tying into this conversation though is that's kind of all part of how we experience entertainment in general. Is it's all subjective. Sundance has these amazing programmers who have great taste in film, but they also have different taste in film, and so even if they love a movie and they think it's good enough to be in their film festival, that's a movie that I watch and I'm like, I really wish I hadn't wasted my time with this because now that's a ticket I didn't get, to see a movie that I might have loved. And I think that that's a case, with any movie. And you have to take the good with the bad when you're a movie fan. Otherwise, you're only going to see stuff that you're going to like and you're going to play it safe. And I know a lot of general audiences do that because their time is limited, especially, parents with kids. You want to go out to a movie, if you're going to spend, that $40 to get tickets and popcorn and pop, and you're going to have a night away from your kids, you want to know it's a movie that's going to be worth your time. But at the same time, I don't think that's, a good enough reason to worry about, keeping that experience intact by going into a movie without knowing at least a little bit about what you're going to see. Like there's a fine line between it. Like I have a friend, actually it's my friend Ben who co-hosts Go Flix Yourself with me, and he's been trying to only see one trailer for a movie, and if he's sold on it and if he thinks it looks good, then he doesn't want to see anything else from it. So he gives himself a little bit of taste, and then if there's any new trailers, TV spots, he avoids it so that way most of the experience is preserved. He still doesn't know spoilers, but he has a good idea of what to expect from the movie. And I think that that's a good balance. And it's something that I wish I could probably do and I would do more of if I wasn't, in this position of having to know as much about movies as I need to write for Slash Film. But it's nothing that I feel frustrated about necessarily.
That's another thing he brings up here is like, we do this for a living. We dive into the news and the spoilers for a living. But I personally, I think I would still have this opinion even if I didn't do this for the living, when the Phantom Menace was announced, when Episode 1 was announced, I became invested as a Star Wars fanatic for, 2 or 3 years, like digging in, seeing like all the like set photos and, reading rumors. And when the first trailer, I went to the theater to see the first trailer, which is that teaser trailer is amazing. And, I waited outside overnight to get tickets and, all the stuff. And that whole experience of that 3 years, the movie at the end of it was not Empire Strikes Back. It was not A New Hope. It was not Return of the Jedi. I don't think it was as bad of a movie as many people say it is, but it definitely wasn't a great movie. And even though I invested 3 years of my life getting excited for this thing that didn't end up being one of my favorite films of all time, I would never give that away ever. Like, I had so much fun getting excited and having that ride. That's what I hope people come to Slash Film partly for, is to get excited for things. I like to get excited for things. But I also don't want to know Han Solo is going to die. But sometimes that happens. Sometimes you end up hearing that, and sometimes sometimes obviously you put the two and two together and you realize, Harrison Ford wanted to be killed off in Return of the Jedi, and George Lucas said no. I wonder what's going to happen in Force Awakens. Let's get on to the last part of this email because we're running long. Circling back, this is Sherwin says, circling back to preserving the experience, magic. I know you're a huge fan of magic and practice it. How would you feel if the veil of secrecy around every single magic trick that exists was lifted? Would it still be magic if the whole audience knew what was coming or how it was done? Sure, if done well, it's still a great trick, and as with a great film. When the viewer knows what's coming, though, the wonder and magic are just less special. Would love to hear your thoughts on this, whether by podcast or response by email. Well, we're doing it by podcast. I want to respond to that. One of my favorite magic routines you can find on YouTube, it's Penn and Teller doing one of the oldest magic tricks known to man is called Cups and Balls. It's where they have 3 balls, 3 cups. There's actually more balls that are hidden, and they end up putting the balls through cups, and this is like this whole routine. The Egyptians did it way back in the pyramids. Penn and Teller like to do this trick with clear plastic cups. So that, and they tell the audience exactly how they're doing it. I'm putting, I'm slipping a ball underneath this cup when the audience doesn't see it. Go through the entire routine, and it is brilliant. It is a brilliant deconstruction of magic and showing not only how much work goes into some of these routines, but you will, even though you are seeing exactly how it's happening, be fooled. You will be fooled with clear plastic cups, and it's not because they're doing any magic. It's that good of a trick. I think when you have something on that level, something that is that great, it's not going to matter if you know how it's done. When you go to a magic show and you see a lady get onto a table and a magician put boxes over her, you know that she's going to get cut in half. It's not that a surprise coming, and you know that she's probably in the table somewhere, but you still enjoy it. I go to the Magic Castle. I'm a member of the Magic Castle. I know, I would say, probably how 90% of the tricks are done when I see them at the Magic Castle, and it doesn't ruin my enjoyment of them whatsoever. Actually, sometimes it enhances my enjoyment. It's almost like, seeing a visual effect in a movie when you've seen a whole, behind-the-scenes feature on the lengths that went to putting that together. So I don't think that knowing that, and I should also say that the magic community is the group of a lot of, they kind of have an old-timey sensibility. Some changes are coming in the past decade since David Blaine kind of broke with street magic. YouTube culture, there's this whole YouTube culture of having tutorials for magic on YouTube, and almost any trick you want to know, you can go to YouTube and find out how it works. A lot of magicians are angry at this. I know, I'm part of the AMA, which one of the code is to not reveal secrets, but I honestly don't think that if an audience knows the secret that ruins the illusion. If the magic is good enough and if it is performed in an artful way, even if they know how it's done, it is going to amaze you. Do either of you, I know this was a magic question, do either of you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with you, Peter. I think that there is this, it's on the audience as well to suspend that disbelief, whether when it comes to magic or when it comes to movies. And if knowing a particular detail or knowing what happened behind the scenes, for example, ruins a movie or an experience for you, I feel like that's a very pedantic way of experiencing things, and it takes the magic out of it. to say it to. And yeah, I don't know if this is a perfect metaphor, because I feel like with the issue of magic and knowing like the details of a trick, it feels more like knowing, what went into a movie. Like this was actually plastic and bubble gum that was making this horrific injury or something like that. It's a little bit it's kind of a loose analogy, but I see what they're going for, and I think that it's I don't think that knowing specific details will ruin a movie if you are invested enough in the story or in the experience.
I would say this. I'll give a Star Wars example. Rey in The Force Awakens gets her quarter portion. She takes it home, puts some water in it, and it grows into like this like loaf of bread or something. This is something when I saw the movie, and I saw it many times, I thought was just a visual effect, just CG. And when I talked to the visual effects guys like a month after release, they told me that was a practical effect, that there is a guy that kind of inflates this like, the loaf. It comes out of the bottom of the thing and inflates into the bowl. And now when I see that scene, that doesn't ruin it for me. It doesn't ruin it. It makes me marvel at how amazing that is. And I know that's probably, we're getting far away from the spoiler discussion, but that's how I feel with magic. When I know the secret, and I see someone great performing it in an artistic way, it is that much more amazing. Brad, do you have any final thoughts on this?
No, not really. I mean, just people need to stop spoiling movies. People need to stop complaining about things that aren't spoilers, and just enjoy the journey.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. I think we need to be courteous. We need to stop spoiling stuff for others, but we also have to be reasonable and not consider something that the filmmaker and studio is putting out there in the public a spoiler. We got to be realistic here. But
exactly.
Hopefully you have gotten something out of our 2 episodes talking about movie and television spoilers. Brad, thanks for coming back. I know that it's been busy for you with all the teaching.
Yeah, it's been crazy busy, and I'll try and check in every now and then when I'm not, crying somewhere.
Anyways, you can find more of my work at /film. You can find HT at Hoai-Tran Bowie. You can find Brad at Ethan_Anderton. Collectively, they have the Millennial Falcon podcast and Go Flix Yourself, which you can find on iTunes. You can find this podcast published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps. Thank you for listening. Go to iTunes, give us a review, give us a rating, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.